Hello everyone. In this tutorial, we'll add a useful feature to our grocery list app so that it saves the content of the grocery list when the user closes the app and then loads it back up when they relaunch the app. Right now you can see if I add papaya to the list, close the app, and then relaunch it, it's no longer there. These other 5 fruits that you see have been hard-coded, so that's why they're still there. What we're going to do is make changes to the app so that it will save the content of the grocery list and load it back up. You can see over here now when I type papaya and add it to our list, close the app completely from memory, and relaunch it, it loads papaya back into the list. In order to do this, we'll be working with storage in Android, and I have 2 tutorials on reading and writing to storage in Android, so I recommend checking those out first. Now let's get started. The first thing that we're going to do is head on over to our main activity, and the logic that we're going to use in order to save the grocery list and then load it back up is that when the app is completely closed from memory, we're going to take the contents of the grocery list or the array list called items and save it into a file. Then inside of our onCreate method when the app is launched, that's when we're going to read from that file and put those items from the file into the items array list over here. Just like we have an onCreate method to handle this part of the activity lifecycle, there is another method called onDestroy, which is what we're interested in order to determine when the Android application or the activity has been completely closed. So we're going to do Control-O and then choose to override onDestroy. Now, above the super.onDestroy is where we're going to write to our file. This is going to be very similar to what I covered in a previous tutorial. We're going to get the file path for our app, and by saying file path equals get application context.get files directory. Once we have this, we're going to create a file output stream object. We'll call it writer, and this is what we'll be using to write to the file. Inside of over here, we're going to create a new file in the constructor. And for the files constructor, this is where we have to provide the path name. So we have this path variable that we created over here. So we're going to pass that in addition to the name of the file that we want to write to, which we can call list.txt. So this is the file where we write to save the contents of our grocery list. And you can see this is underlined in red because we're just surrounded with a try and catch block, which we can do. And I'll go ahead and change this file not found exception to a general exception. Now that I have this file output stream object, I can go ahead and say writer.write. And over here is where we're going to write our items array list. So we have this items array list in our main activity. We're going to write this to our file. So we're going to do that by saying writer.write items.toString. And if you do Control P, you can see that the write method requires a byte array. And we can just take this string that we have here and say .2bytes. Or .get bytes, that's what I meant, and now we have a bytes array that we're writing. The last thing we have to do is call writer.close, and this is all we need to write to our file and save the contents of our grocery list right before the app is completely closed. Now we're ready for the second part of our feature, which is reading from the file and loading that content into our grocery list. So right above the onDestroy method, we're going to create another method called load content. So it'll be public void load content. And what this function will do is it will read from our file and put that content into our array list. So once again, we're going to do something very similar to what we did over here in our onDestroy method. I'm just going to go ahead and copy and paste the line of code to get the file path. And now that we have this, we're going to create a file object for the file that we're to read from. The file that we're to read from is going to be on this path, and its name is list.txt. So now that we have the file that we're going to read from, we're also going to create a byte array called content. And we're going to take the content from this read from file and put it into the byte array. So we're going to say this is a new byte array, and the length is going to be read from.length. Then I'm going to create a file input stream object to actually read the content from the file. And over here for the parameter, because we want to read from this read from file, that's what I'm going to pass in over here. And then I'm going to call stream.read and pass in the array that I want to read the content into, which is our byte array called content. And once again, you can see that this is in red because we're just surrounded with the try and catch block. So I'll go ahead and do that. And we'll take this line over here, stream.read, and put it right underneath where we gave our stream variable a value. And let's see why this is in red. This is in red because we have to add another catch clause specifically for it. That's why I can just change this file not found exception to a general exception, and now that's gone. If you want a more detailed explanation for how this reading from a file code works, make sure to check out the tutorial on that. But the main gist is by now at line 103, the contents byte array is going to contain the content from our list.txt file as a byte array. So to actually get a string from this, we're going to say string s equals new string, and as the parameter for the string constructor, we're going to pass in our content byte array. So now s will contain the content of list.txt. And if you remember when we were writing to our file, what we were doing was we were calling the ArrayList.toString method. We're calling items.toString, which means the content of our file, so string s, will look something like this: apple, then banana, kiwi, strawberry, and you get the idea. And the main point, the reason that I typed this out is that we have to note that this string s over here is going to be formatted exactly like this. It's going to have square brackets at the front and the end, and each of the individual items from our grocery list is going to be separated by a comma and a space. So what we have to do is parse the string that we have over here and take each of these individual items and add them to our items list. That way we can see all of these items loaded into our list view. The first thing that we're going to do with this string is cut off these square brackets at the end. So we're going to say s equals s.substring, and this is a function that all strings have. We're going to pass in 1 and s.length minus 1 as the parameters. So we'll take the substring of the string that we have over here, effectively cutting off the square brackets, which we don't want. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to split the string by the comma and the space. So strings have another function called string.split. And inside over here, we can provide what we want to split the string by. In this case, we want to take out these commas and spaces and just be left with the actual items. So that's why over here, we're going to type a comma and then a space. And this will give us a string array containing just these words that we're interested in. And now that we have the string array containing each of our grocery list items, we can go ahead and put this into our items array list by saying items equals new array list. And inside over here for the parameter of the constructor, we're going to say arrays.asList and then pass in our split array. So this will just take it, make it an array list, and then put it into items. There are two more things that we have to do, or two more lines of code, and that is adapter equals new ListView adapter, and over here we're going to pass in this, which is the application context, and then our items list. So this is the list that contains our items. And then we can say listview.setAdapter adapter. And this is the code that we need to read from the file and then parse the content and put it into our list view. So the last thing we have to do is just come inside of our onCreate method, and anywhere in the onCreate method we just have to call the loadContent method. That way when onCreate is called and the app is launched, it will read from the file and load the content into our list view. So let's go ahead and test this out. So now I have the grocery list app open over here, and I'm going to go ahead and add in papaya again as I did earlier. And now papaya is in our grocery list. And the top 5 fruits over here have been hard-coded over here inside of our onCreate method. Papaya has not, I just added that right now. So when I go ahead and completely close the app from memory, what's happening is onDestroy is called. And that's where our app is going to be writing the content from our grocery list into the file. Now when I relaunch the app by clicking on the icon, it's going to read from the file, and you can see papaya is here. As always, the code for this tutorial series can be found on the IGApps GitHub page, and the link to the repository is in the video description. If you found this tutorial useful, please make sure to like it and share the channel with friends so that it can continue to grow. If you have any ideas for tutorials that you want to see made by the IGApps YouTube channel, leave a comment below and I'll try to take a look at that. Until the next tutorial, happy developing from IGApps.